charm isn't all that great. My automobile is a piece of crap. My fashion sense is a little whack, and my friends are just as great.
Hi, welcome to The Writer and the Law. Dun dun dun. Fascinating fact for those of you who are Law and Order fans. The sound that Law and Order makes, like whenever it transitions between scenes, like dun dun dun, that sound actually includes, and I'm not making this up, 500 Japanese men jumping on a pine wood floor. Who puts these things together? I don't know. Anyway, so this lesson, The Writer and the Law, stemmed out of a lot of questions that I've gotten from previous classes about, particularly when we got into writing press releases and blogs, they were worried about getting in trouble. Like, if they were publishing on something that was, potentially, damaging to individuals or organizations, and they wanted to know, what is the law? And so we put together this presentation, and I think that it's a good primer for those of you, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. So hopefully you'll leave here little, communication lawyers. So anyway, here's our objectives for the day. We want you to understand the difference between libel, slander, and defamation. It's the first thing we'll talk about. We'll know the 5 things that must be proven to win a libel case. We'll talk about understanding what constitutes an invasion of privacy and the types of invasions, and then we're going to finally end up with understanding like what copyright law is and its exceptions. And so hopefully, there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of myth, I think, that's out there about these topics, and whenever you break them down, they're actually not that complicated. So I think that when we go through this, it'll hopefully clear up a lot of things for you. And what we're going to do with this lesson, there won't be like a writing assignment, with this, but what we're going to do is we're going to give you several scenarios in class, of legal issues, and then have you apply the things that you've learned from this lesson in class with your teams to come up with a good case for or against. So. All right, so here are the 3 main threats that affect every publisher or writer, and that is that your information contains incorrect information that may harm somebody's reputation. That's always a threat anytime you publish something. It may contain information that invades somebody's privacy, and it may contain material that's subject to copyright. And, not surprisingly, those are the 3 things that we're going to focus on today: libel, slander, and defamation, invasion of privacy, and copyright. So we're going to start first with libel, slander, and defamation. It's hard to say. Disambiguation, because that's easy to say. All right, so think of it this way. Defamation is like a coin, and the 2 sides of those coins are libel and slander. So defamation covers both libel and slander. And so what defamation is the action of damaging the good reputation of somebody. And so, again, it can come in 2 forms. Libel is publication of a false statement of fact that seriously harms someone's reputation. And we're going to break down that step by step here in a moment. Slander is making a false spoken statement that is damaging to a person's reputation. Of the 2, libel is much more, it's taken more seriously because it can do more damage. A lot of people will tell you, if they ask what's the difference between libel and slander, they'll say, oh, libel's written and slander's spoken. And that's not actually the case. Libel can be spoken. The difference is that libel is publicized and slander is just, an utterance that's made. So the difference being, say I'm a newscaster and on the nightly news, I, in my news report, give some information that's, damaging of somebody's reputation that turns out to be false. Even though that's spoken, it's considered libel because it's publicized, like it goes out to a broad audience, via the cable or the network news. Slander, on the other hand, is more like, if I was at a function and was given a speech and said something that's damaging to somebody's reputation, that stops at the edge of where that speech is. Like it goes to a small audience. That would constitute slander because it doesn't go out from there. It's not recorded in any way. All right, hopefully that makes sense. All right, so let's talk about defamation. Encompassing both libel and slander. Most of you are thinking, oh, I'm not really gonna be making any, like hard-hitting investigative reporting, that would cause me to get in trouble. And those things, even though they're the ones that we tend to focus on because they're, sensational, 95 out of 100 defamation suits are a result of routine problems. Basically, routine publication of charges of crime, immorality, incompetence, or inefficiency. And basically, what it's saying is that when writers get sloppy in doing their homework, in the day-to-day stuff, that's where most of these cases come from. And so an example is like getting a plea wrong, so if you're reporting, like if you're the beat cop or the beat reporter at the courthouse and like somebody goes in for like a DUI and you report them in the paper as a child molester, that's serious. They can sue you for that. Birth notices, wedding announcements is really funny. Apparently it's a fun thing to do, to call in and say two people that hate each other got married in hopes that they'll publish it in the paper. Just giving you all kinds of good ideas. I always like to give the background on words. Libel comes from the Latin word liber, which means book, which is, I think, is why people always associate libel as being, with the written word. As you can see, it's sort of fallen off in use. This according to Google. So libel is more broad than just the written word. It is written, but it can also include television broadcasts, radio broadcasts, and other media with a wide audience, just like we talked about before. And it's not just words. Like, it can also include pictures, cartoons, captions, headlines, basically anything that you can put on a paper or send out, via the television, can be included under libel. Isn't that exciting? All right, this is an example of from the Texas state statutes. I could read it like a cowboy. Anyhow, tends to inure to the living person's reputation and thereby expose the person to public hatred, contempt or ridicule, or financial injury, or to impeach any person's honesty, integrity, virtue, and reputation, or to publish the natural defects of anyone and thereby expose the person to public hatred, ridicule, or financial injury. That's just an example. All right, so let's break this down. This is the moment where I would play like MC Hammer. So what is a publication? And I have like, we're going to, publication of false statements of facts that seriously harm someone's reputation. We're going to break it down word by word. Get excited. So what is a publication? It can include anything from news articles that you write and publish, to blog posts that you make, even in your own personal blog. It can include headlines, promotional materials that your organization puts out. It can include cartoons, particularly political, satirical cartoons. It can include a letter to the editor, quotes, like if you're quoting somebody, even if you get the quote right and the quote happens to be libelous, you're liable for that. Isn't that exciting? And it also guest columns and editorials. So we'll talk more about that later, but what these last three show is that if you publish something that other people wrote and got wrong, you can be liable. So good times. So who is someone? This is a good question. There's a legal definition of someone. So here's a question for you. Have you identified a person if you have not used his or her name? I'll let you think about it for a minute. Okay, that's enough time. And the answer is yes, you can. So if you give away too much information that identifies an individual, even if you don't use their name, it still counts as identifying someone. And so an example would be a top official at Yearling Middle School has been misusing school property, including joyriding in school buses. I spelled buses wrong. You can spell buses either way, but when you spell it with two S's, it actually means kisses. Isn't that funny? Anyhow. So we say a top official and we think, oh, we haven't identified them by name, but we really have, because it's a middle school. How many top officials are there? Like when you say top official, you think the principal or like one of three vice principals. So what if we spread it around? What if we say top officials at Yearling Middle School have been misusing school property? Now you've just created group libel. So now more people can sue you. And so basically, like, you're still identifying like a relatively small group of people, top officials at one middle school. And so a better way to do it, might be to say An Okeechobee, these are real things that happened in Okeechobee, by the way, might be to say, an official in the Okeechobee County School District has been, arrested for misuse of school property, including whatever. And because that's a wide enough net that now you can't identify it because there's 17 schools in Okeechobee County, believe it or not. All right. So what is false? Publication of a false statement. You can publish anything that's true, no matter how, damning or defaming or, disruptive of somebody's life. If it's true, you can publish, all day long. But, if it's false, that's where we get into trouble. So in this defense, the best defense is always truth, but the caveat is that you have to be able to prove it to be true. If you can't prove it, you can be in some trouble. So what is a statement of fact? This is another thing, publication of a false statement of fact that seriously harms someone's reputation. And so here we make the distinction between fact and opinion. And so a pure statement of opinion can never be libelous because it's understood to be your opinion, and you're allowed to have an opinion. So if I said the school's principal is completely incompetent, that's my opinion. Nobody's going to be able to sue me for that. Where most people get into trouble is when they start to mix facts with opinion. And so, I think Mr. Jones is a terrible principal. You're good up until that point, but then you start to put in a statement of fact, something that can be verified as true or false. And we say, because he stole a school bus and took it mudding. These are real things that happen in Okeechobee. That's a statement of fact, and if it happens to not be true, then, you're in a libelous situation. Again, true opinion, you're allowed to do all day long. It's whenever it's a statement of fact that has to be there to be libelous. So what harms? So it's not that it's somebody and it's false and it's a publication. It's that it has to seriously harm someone's reputation. And usually when we say this, we mean something that alludes to illegal conduct, sexual misconduct, honesty, integrity, credibility, a person's professional competency, any kind of racial, ethnic, or religious bigotry, and also even financial stability or credit rating, because that can affect people's ability to do business if we, sort of wrongly write that, people's business is doing badly or, poorly, or they're not doing good business, because that can make people not want to do business with them or loan them money, and so that's a very damaging, harmful thing. So, all right, other notes on libel. Here's a question. Are you liable for third-party pieces that you publish? I've already kind of given you the answer to this one. So, yes. That was easy. So quotes, even when you accurately quote somebody, like if you get all the words right, if the words in the quote that you get right happen to be libelous, you can still implicate yourself in that. And that's why, as a reporter or as somebody that's publishing something, even on your blog or in your newsletter, for your company, you need to do fact checking. If something looks particularly, damaging or harmful to somebody, you need to follow up with that person before you publish it. So also, picking up something off the wire. I won't explain what a wire is. And if you want to reblog, if you find a blog that's good, that's published on some other agricultural blog, and you think, oh, my readers would like to read this, I'm going to reblog this. And so you do like the reblog feature and it shows up on your blog. That can get you into trouble as well. So lots of ways to get into trouble. So you're being sued for libel. Exciting things. Here are 5 things that your plaintiffs have to prove, the plaintiff being the person that's bringing the charge, to prove to get money out of you. So first one is that a defamatory statement was made. That one's pretty self-evident. 2 is that the defamatory statement is a matter of fact, not opinion. With this one, there are different, depending on whether you're a public person or a private person, adds a layer of complexity to this statement number 2. And so what I mean by that is if you're a public person, like if you're a public official, it's understood that you're going to draw more flack. And so a public official could be anybody that's elected, any kind of celebrity, And so for those people, they have to prove that the defamatory statement was made with actual malice or reckless disregard. So they have to prove basically that the people published the wrong thing, a false statement, with the intent to hurt them, or in a way that was just like completely reckless for their job. A private person, like if I wanted to bring suit against somebody, would only have to prove that the person was negligent. They just didn't do their job well. So fascinating. Anyhow, the number 3, defamatory statement is also false. That seems self-evident because again, if it's true, you ain't got nothing. But if it's false, you got something. Anyway, number 4, the defamatory statement is about, of and concerning the plaintiff. Again, that it identifies me as the plaintiff if I'm the plaintiff. And number 5, the defamatory statement was published with a requisite degree of fault. So there you go. There you have it, folks. Oh, look, they turn red when I press the button to move forward. All right. We'll stop here and we'll pick up in the next video with invasion of privacy. Get excited.